If you're needing a nice telephoto lens that won't break the budget for some sports photography, I think I might have a solution for you. This is a Tamron 50-300 f 4.5 to 6.3, and it's a $800 telephoto lens that honestly packs a punch. Tamron was very kind enough to loan me this lens because I've been testing it out to see if it's going to be a great telephoto lens for sports photography, since I'm going to be going to the US Open later this year to take some photos while I'm out there and in New York City. And I wanted to have a telephoto type of lens that has good range but isn't as heavy as it could be, and also for the future, maybe that it won't break the bank if I'm trying to get something long term. I actually recently been using this lens at my tennis academy while taking photos out there of the kids as they play their sports and everything, to test it out to see how well the zoom range capabilities of the lens is. One of the main things that I really love about this lens is just the versatility that it has from 50mm all the way to 300. This allows me to do so much on the court while I'm trying to take photos of my students and just in general with sports photography. One of the reasons why this is great is because depending how close or not I am to said student either hitting the ball that I want to capture or, from another court or anything, I'm able to zoom out or zoom in accordingly, which makes it a lot nicer. I'm able to get a student of mine that could be a couple courts away where I can zoom in all the way to the 300, get a couple shots from that one, move along to the next one that's closer to me, get a couple shots of that person as well, and then just keep on going while not missing a beat. The good thing about this lens is that it's just not that heavy when I pair it up with my Sony a7 IV, even if you want to use a smaller camera like the Sony a7C Mark II. I think one of the most reasons why people tend to stray away from telephoto lenses is due to their size, because they can get a little bit heavier, as I've talked about this lens in comparison to the 50-400. Now for myself, I don't do as much sports photography in the sense of maybe with a far away kind of, subject like how you would with maybe soccer, football, even baseball. But having a good starting point with an $800 telephoto lens where you can capture fairly enough things with the 50 all the way to 300 is quite nice to have. For me, one of the biggest things that I like about this lens is just that I don't notice that I have a zoom lens that's a telephoto lens because of the size of it. It's actually very compact, and even more compact than my 35-150, that it honestly makes me forget how much of a zoom range I have until I start zooming in. It's a very sharp lens. The one thing that you're gonna notice because of it is because of the higher aperture. You have a 4.5 variable, aperture lens to the 6.3 the more you zoom in, which to me is not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is very usable with the price point that you're getting this lens for. A lot of the telephoto range lenses anyway have a higher aperture like that, with the 5.6 and the 6.3s and so on, because of that reason, because you need that for the glass itself, or you still get that compression and bokeh out of it, but you need something like that to be able to have most things in focus when you're that compressed of an image. At least that's my understanding of it. I'm not an engineer or anything of that sort, but just my thought process when it comes down to understanding why they go with that realm. Because there are some telephoto lenses that are 2.8 and they're great, but they're couples of thousands of dollars that most of us are not going to be diving into unless you're very niche into that type of lens that you might need it. Then it would make sense to maybe have it. But for most people that are probably watching this video, you're trying to get your first either telephoto lens or just add a telephoto lens to your lineup because you just need one to have around to capture those, specific types of shots here and there, but not all the time. Now, I want to talk a little bit more of the cons when it comes down to this lens if you're kind of considering this to see if it's the right fit for you. So hopefully it'll help you out. For me, this lens is great if you're going to have a lot of natural light and a lot of light to be able to, crank up the ISO, but also crank up your shutter to freeze motion if that's what you're wanting. This lens with the higher aperture going from 4.5 to 6.3 can be a little bit daunting if you are not sure that you can, want to shoot up a lot higher ISO for one, and you need to freeze motion. Like if you're stuck inside, maybe at a basketball game, it could be a hit or a miss depending on the lighting of the location and as well with your camera. For me personally, I'm not scared of it because my Sony a7 IV is really good with low light capabilities for photos and videos, that I'm okay with cranking up that ISO and cleaning up the image in post if needed to be able to capture and freeze motion if I want to have a higher shutter speed. With that being said, if you're needing to have, more of a telephoto type of lens that you need more range out of it, probably not going to be the lens for you. So you're probably not even going to have to worry about that anyway. But at the end of the day, cranking up the ISO and the shutter speed to freeze motion with this lens It's gonna be either you want it or you don't. But know that you can clean up the image fairly well in post, so don't get too kind of straight away that with a 6.3 of this lens, because personally, I think the bokeh of this at 6.3 at 300 millimeters is great. So especially if you're up close and personal to your subject, like how you're trying to be, more than likely, I don't think you'll go wrong with that whatsoever. Another con might be is just that you only get the 300 millimeter range compared to maybe other telephoto lenses that might cost a little bit more. For example, the 50-400 by Tamron as well is a $1,300 lens, but you get more customization. You also get more focal range at the 400, which is a 100 millimeter difference that can be quite a bit depending on what sport you're trying to capture. For me personally with tennis, I don't have to worry so much about being too far away. The only times that I might think I might have to worry about it is maybe at the US Open because of how far up the seats can go, as well as, you know, the limited distances that I might be able to get to be able to capture the footage that I might want to and the photos that I need to. But depending on the stadium, I should be fine, to be honest. But it's just good to know that with a 300, I should be fine. I would need to go more up close and personal. Well, that kind of just sucks, but it is what it is. You can crop in, have 33 megapixels, so it's not the end of the world. There's always, you know, a little bit of a workaround with everything. Now, one of the cool things about this lens as well for the 800 price point is you do get vibration compensation. So it's a pro and a con, because depending on your camera, it might work really great or it might probably not work as well, because with the A7 IV, it works pretty great. Obviously, you have steady shot inside this camera. You don't have a button to turn it off like you do with other telephoto lenses, like with the 50-400. There's a dedicated button to have different types of vibration compensation that the lens provides. This one is just whatever it has because of the camera kind of talking to each other is what you're going to get out of it, which helps out a little bit to, you know, be able to focus on things where it's not feeling too shaky when you're trying to, you know, get up close and personal with it. So it's nice to have that, but if you're not used to how vibration compensation and, like, you know, a little bit of stabilization works, you might have to get used to it. So it's just more of not a con per se, but it's just more get used to it and you'll be fine, because you're going to have to really set this up so that you can kind of move and focus and be on the money. Some people like to use like a monopod or anything like that they might need to be able to kind of focus better. Other people might have a good tripod that they can use for that purpose. But for me personally, I use mainly handheld because of the way that I have to move around. So it can be a little bit daunting at times, but you just get used to it and know that you might miss a shot here and there. So just a lot of practice never hurt anybody. I had to use this lens quite a bit with handheld because of that purpose. So it's just more practice that I would have to do to get used to it. But overall, I think it's a great lens for starting into your, you know, telephoto range of type of lenses, as well for sports photography, if that's what you're trying to do. I know that there are other telephoto lenses that you could probably get into for the maybe a little bit more higher price range for the more telephoto side of things. But for me, for $800 at the weight and size of this lens, as well as what you're getting from the 50-300, is very hard to beat for sports photography. Personally, for me, if you're wanting to start to get into sports photography, I think this would be the perfect starter lens until you figure out if that's going to be your niche or not, where you need to spend way more money onto those, you know, higher end telephoto lenses. Especially if you want to do as well, maybe a minor like wildlife photography. I was able to do some of it with this one as well. Capture a bit of, like, you know, birds and ducks and, you know, whatever you can with it. You might have to kind of get a little bit closer than you would with other telephoto lenses, but it's a good start just to see what you're gonna like. But for the sports photography, I think that this lens is probably gonna be a great starting point for $800. I'm actually very happy with this lens. I was actually surprised how much I actually liked it. And I liked it even more than the 50-400 that I've tested out by Tamron. The size of the 50-400 is not horrible, but it does make me not want to use it as much as I would with this size for the capabilities of the range, especially because of the aperture, because they both have the same aperture of 4.5 to 6.3. That being said, I'm used to a 35-150 by Tamron, so having a little bit of that extra weight doesn't, you know, hinder my thoughts of using a lens and a camera combo like this style. But having something lighter just feels so much nicer whenever you're wanting to bring certain lenses with you, especially if you're going to be needing a little bit of that wider range to the telephoto for sports photography, because you do, you know, up close, but you want to capture the establishing shots as well and everything that's happening around. So that's pretty much my experience with this lens and, you know, camera setup. I use it a lot with my tennis academy to do testing it out. I mean, that's why I have a shirt that says tennis, but that's basically it. You know, like, I mean, for me, I think it's a perfect setup to start into your sports photography and then ease your way into something else. And you can use it for portraits as well. You might not have the shallow depth of field with the bokeh that you would have with like a 1.8 or 2.8 style. But it's better to have something that you can use versatile, like has good versatility for your content creation, than having to start buying too many lenses and add all this gear when you're not sure where your budget can go. So hopefully this helps you out when finding out if you need this lens for, you know, your sports photography with a telephoto lens at a good price and size. And if you have any questions when it comes down to this lens, please leave them down below. I would love to help you out with any concerns or doubts or any questions you might have about it to see if it'll help you out to pick up this lens or maybe move on to the next one. If you want to pick it up, it'll be linked down below in my affiliate links if you'd like to support the channel that way. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.